Greetings. Do without wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Magic in Theory and Practice video. Today I'm going to dive into Chapter 8 of Equilibrium, and of the general and particular method of preparation of the furniture of the temple, and of the instruments of art. So I just want to say to anybody that tunes in regularly or fairly regularly, I needed a little bit of a break, so it's been like 3 weeks since I posted my last video. But yeah, I'm gonna dive in to this one in just a second, and I'm gonna be trying to put things out weekly, I think, for a little bit. I don't want to overwhelm myself, but I don't want to go 3 weeks between videos every single time. So without further ado, Chapter 8 opens up, quote, "Before there was equilibrium, countenance beheld not countenance. The full significance of this aphorism is an arcanum of the grade of Absissimus. It may, however, be partially apprehended by the study of GraalOF and the Book of the Law and commentaries thereon. It explains existence." End quote. In short, when everything is in perfect union, all is one thing and indecipherable, as anything else cannot be viewed objectively. There was before the beginning no thing. It had no awareness of self or of anything. The one had no other thing to interact with, and could not behold another's face nor its own. Lower spheres were made, so the one could express itself by multiplicity. Then it was divided into main parts, the macrocosm and microcosm, so that 0 equals 2. So in this chapter, regarding equilibrium, we mean this, quote, "You must get your macrocosm and microcosm exactly balanced, vertically and horizontally, or the images will not coincide." End quote. Crowley then claims, quote, "This equilibrium is affirmed by the magician in arranging the temple. Nothing must be lopsided. If you have anything in the north, you must put something equal and opposite to it in the south. The importance of this is so great, and the truth of it so obvious, that no one with the most mediocre capacity for magic can tolerate any unbalanced object for a moment." End quote. And this makes sense, but there are certainly exceptions to the rule. For instance, most often for the Limerick temples, a stele with the Book of the Law is placed in the east, but nothing in the west. If you have a central altar for a ritual, it does make sense to have what's on it in balanced, orderly fashion. Now, if you put up Enochian tablets, all of them should go up, in my opinion, not just the one you are working with that day. If we look at the temple of Liber 15, there is a definite balance to the setup. The high altar to the far east is placed in Kether. This is balanced by the tomb in the far west, Malkuth. The fire altar in place of Tifereth is balanced by the water altar in place of Yesod. The middle pillar is represented perfectly, with the congregation on both sides to further balance the temple. Crowley goes on, quote, "For this reason, the weapons, altar, circle, and magus are all carefully proportioned with one another. It will not do to have a cup like a thimble and a wand like a weaver's beam." End quote. So all I could say is look at your own weapons. Does this hold true for you as well? It does for myself, and happened innately, as they all just felt right upon purchasing or crafting. Quote, "Again, the arrangement of the weapons of the altar must be such that they look balanced, nor should the magician have any unbalanced ornament. If he have the wand in his right hand, let him have the ring on his left, or let him take the ankh, or the bell, or the cup. And however little he move to the right, let him balance it by an equivalent movement to the left, or forwards, backwards. And let him correct each idea by implying the contradictory contained therein." End quote. Now this holds true, whether it's a big ritual or small ritual. So look at the LBRP. Pentagrams are drawn in all 4 quarters. For Resh, all 4 quarters of the sun are worked upon. In the LBRP, the divine names that you use for each of the 4 pentagrams balance one another with some type of co-equal or opposite. And so just take a look at the divine names in that ritual. Now, in truth, this chapter is referring to high magic, that which is up to par with Liber 15 or initiation rites, that quality of ritual, not the common offering rite to invoke a deity by reciting a simple prayer. Nevertheless, when you write your own rituals, know that you are practicing, and one day you will look back from a more sophisticated magical perch and see what you thought was good then was but child's play. And you should then know that in years to come, you will be even better and write more concise, systematic rituals. So adding balance and other such intricacies into your rites will help improve your skill and attention to detail, as well as push you to get to the next level of crafting ritual. This next bit is very useful, quote, "If he invokes severity, let him recount that severity is the instrument of mercy. If stability, let him show the base of that stability to be the constant change." End quote. This, during ritual, is important because invoking one kind of force too often without balancing yourself with its opposite can have ill effects if not thought out properly. One person may be solely attracted to masculine energy, and they may already be a very masculine acting person, and thus, to constantly invoke that force will cause them to neglect their feminine self, and they will fail to make progress ascending to the highest. So in ritual, thinking about how you are invocating has a firm connection to its opposite, so as to avoid imbalance. This could be taken out of the circle and into your life. If you find that you are too passive, assert yourself more often, or vice versa. Quote, "In this way, let every idea go forth as a triangle on the basis of two opposites, making an apex transcending their contradiction in a higher harmony. It is not safe to use any thought in magic unless that thought has been equilibrated and destroyed." End quote. As I've said many times in many videos, a major milestone is single-pointedness of mind. To concentrate solely upon what you are doing, not permitting any thought you do not want to enter your mind, and the ability to stay fixed upon the great work. To continue, quote, "Thus again with the instruments themselves, the wand must be ready to change into a serpent, the pentacle into a whirling swastika or disc of Jove, as if to fulfill the functions of the sword." Note, this is a note by myself. The wand is stiff, but the serpent bendable. This can be done on the astral realm, and it refers to the will being fluid. The disc lays still while the swastika spins ecstatically, so he's pointing out how these static objects have some type of movement to them that you could incorporate on the astral plane. To continue with the quote, "The cross is both the death of the Savior and the phallic symbol of resurrection. Will itself must be ready to culminate in the surrender of that will." End quote. I hope that's straightforward enough. It refers to the holy hexagram, with blue ascending triangle representing the passive ascension in waiting for God, and the red descending triangle representing the tongue of Hor descending upon the magician. At that stage of magic, one must commit an act of will which is passive, waiting, and then in the supernals one must fulfill their will by uniting with the highest and performing the will of God, so to speak. To do that, one must surrender to the will of their ruach in trade for the highest or universal will. A footnote by Crowley about this reads, quote, "It is the extension in matter of the individual self, the indivisible point, determined by reference to the four quarters. This is the formula which enables it to express its secret self. Its dew, falling upon the rose, is developed into an eidolon of itself in due season." End quote. The four quarters concept is dependent upon two things, the earth and the individual. In space, there is not at present a determined east or any other direction, just space, though in relation to the earth, one could assign direction. And besides that, magic and yoga are means to go within oneself to the secret center, the heart where Hadit lies. East is merely a symbol of the way inward to the center point, or the zero, where the Ein Sof is, that spark of divinity. This point is the place where the rose buds, synonymous with the root in Tefereth. The universe, as it were, extends by perception from this point, and it is the function of the adept to express their secret self by manifesting it outwardly from this point. That is the whole of the union of the rose on the root, the self or God, blooming and then extending in all directions from the heart. Even in the Zohar, it mentions that the tree of life extends outward from the heart and extends to other students or people that you meet, and the seed is planted upon them. This extension of LVX in this chapter must be balanced by extending in all directions at the same rate so that no way is unbalanced and the adept toppled. The quarters are assigned gender for their attributes are aligned with the nature of the human, which is bigender. Quote, "Any idea is thus in itself positive and negative, active and passive, male and female, is fit to exist above the abyss. Any idea not so equilibrated is below the abyss, contains in itself an unmitigated duality or falsehood, and is to that extent cliffotic and dangerous. Even an idea like truth is unsafe unless it is realized that all truth is in one sense falsehood. For all truth is relative, and if it be supposed absolute, will mislead." End quote. A footnote tells the reader to refer to the Book of Lies. For the premise of Liber 333 is that thought and perception are below the abyss and therefore inherently false, and the human brain is incapable of perceiving the absolute, though the spirit of mankind is of the absolute, and it is capable of expression, not by word but by action. Word is the mere attempt to label action, to categorize it. But its limit is that it misleads because it is on the mental plane and not the supernal. Here we get on to section 2 of this chapter. Quote, "It is said in the ancient books of magic that everything used by the magician must be virgin. That is, it must never have been used by any other person for any other purpose. The greatest importance was attached by the adepts of old to this, and it made the task of the magician no easy one. He wanted a wand, and in order to cut and trim it, he needed a knife. It was not sufficient merely to buy a new knife. He felt that he had to make it himself. In order to make the knife, he would require 100 other things, the acquisition of each of which might require 100 more, and so on. This shows the impossibility of disentangling oneself from one's environment. Even in magic, we cannot get on without the help of others." End quote. This reminds me of Mahayana Buddhism and the fallacy of libertarianism. We are all dependent upon someone, or else nature, at some point, and absolute independence is impossible, especially when it comes to having a sustainable society. No one in our present world can own land, tools, and skills it would take to be independent from others. Can one grow all the food, make the ingredients into all the mandatory types of nourishment needed for life? Can they also gather and make everything from clothes to paper and pens, books, medicine, and entertainment one needs to have a healthy life? There are simply not enough hours in the day. I mean, even if they could, let's say there's 1 out of every billion that can, not every person has the ability to do this, nor the space needed with the proper climates for everyone to do so, even if a handful could. Therefore, we depend upon trade with those who have one item we need, and trade with another and another. Thus, the government's function is to make sure no one is overreaching and abusing others. Unfortunately, at present, things are unfair, as we have broken governments all around the world, war and poverty, etc. So that notion that we are better off without them appeals to anyone who is desperate and thinks they would be better off in an anarchistic global state. To me, I say rubbish. I think we need a better government with laws that benefit the people and not only the wealthy, as opposed to no government whatsoever. But that's a whole complete side rant. I'm not going to go any further down that line of thought. So then, on a spiritual level, even if one could go off the grid and produce everything they need to survive and thrive on their own, they are still dependent upon the earth, the weather, the sun. It is the human condition to be dependent upon nature. We have not yet grown to live in harmony with it. That is the problem. In regards to the quote above, the old books are often wrong, in need of updating, or translated wrong by people who knew the languages but not occultism. Many of the Solomonic texts said that if a menstruating woman looked upon your magical gear, it was then unclean and needed to be purified. Again, rubbish. I am more aligned with the gory thinking that everything is goth and sacred. The Book of the Law states that the best blood is of the moon for blood magic, and that includes consecration. Any magician worth their salt can purify anything they intend to use as a magical weapons anyway. Plus, everything need not always be virgin when it comes to grimoire magic, and certainly not for Golden Dawn ceremonial magic or Thelema. You may want to buy something new and unused, so as to have no connection to the item other than the person who made it. Or you might be drawn to a magical weapon which was owned by a practicing magi before you. It's personal. You could choose to make your own weapons and tools, and the tools needed to make those weapons. Doing so is really cool, as it will take you on a quest of gathering materials and learning how to use them, plus the skills you develop in making them. But you could just as well buy them. Further down in this chapter, Crowley writes, quote, "Buy whatever may be necessary without haggling. The least of the magical instruments is worth infinitely more than all that you possess, or, if you like, than all that you stupidly suppose yourself to possess. Break this rule, and the usual nemesis of the half-hearted awaits you. Not only do you get inferior instruments, but you lose in some other way what you thought you were so clever to have saved. On the other hand, if you purchase without haggling, you will find that along with your purchase, the vendor has thrown in the purse of Fortunatus. No matter in what extremity you may seem to be, at the last moment your difficulties will be solved. For there is no power either on the firmament or of the ether, or of the earth or under the earth, on dry land or in the water, of whirling air or of rushing fire, or any spell or scourge of God which is not obedient to the necessity of the magician. That which he has not. That which he is, and that which he will be, and neither God nor man, nor all the malice of Choronzon can either check him or cause him to wave for one instant upon the path." End quote. There's one more idea in section 2 of this chapter, which I could do no better than quote in full. Quote, "Another notable injunction of the ancient magic was that whatever appertained to the work should be single. The wand was to be cut with a single stroke of the knife. There must be no boggling and hacking at things, no clumsiness and no hesitation. If you strike a blow at all, strike with all your strength. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. If you are going to take up magic, make no compromise. You cannot make revolutions with rose water, or wrestle in a silk hat. You will find very soon that you must either lose the hat or stop wrestling. Most people do both. They take up the magical path without sufficient reflection, without that determination of adamant which made the author of this book exclaim, as he took the first oath, Perdurabo, I will endure to the end." End quote. And that leaves section 3. This section opens up with the idea that is fundamental to the great work of the Lema. Quote, "In all actions the same formula are applicable. To invoke a god, i.e. to raise yourself to that godhead, the process is threefold: purification, consecration, and initiation." End quote. When it comes to joining a fraternity, coming under the tutelage of an instructor, performing ritual, or making an item and magical weapon, the formula is the same: purification, consecration, and initiation. First you cleanse the thing, which is done with orisons and sometimes salt water. Then make the thing holy by bestowing it with light. Incense is often employed. And finally, initiation, actually sparking that light like an ignition to make it work. This depends upon what medium is being used. In any case, it is done with word and gesture. Quote, "Therefore every magical weapon, and even the furniture of the temple, must be passed through this threefold regimen. The details only vary on inessential points. E.g., to prepare the magician, he purifies himself by maintaining his chastity and abstaining from any defilement. But to do the same with, let us say, the cup, we assure ourselves that the metal has never been employed for any other purpose. We smelt virgin ore, and we take all possible pains in refining the metal. It must be chemically pure. To sum up this whole matter in a phrase, every article employed is treated as if it were a candidate for initiation. But in those parts of the ritual in which the candidate is blindfolded, we wrap the weapon with a black cloth. The oath which he takes is replaced by a charge, in similar terms. The details of the preparation of each weapon should be thought out carefully by the magician." End quote. The word chastity is used in conjunction with purifying oneself. Chastity was used by the Christian Gnostic initiates and Hindus to be an abstinence from vice, specifically sex. The Elamites employ the word much differently. In Little Essays Towards Truth, Crowley gives the Lemic initiatory definitions for many terms, and there we find what he means by chastity. So I don't know if I should share this or not, but it's on the script, so what the hell. So when I became a probationer of Outer College in 2016, I mistook the word chastity from the task list of the probationer, where it said, quote, "They shall hold themselves chaste and reverent toward thy body, and the ordeal of initiation, for that the ordeal of initiation is no light one. This is of particular importance in the last 2 months of their probation." End quote. I actually thought it was for some reason referring to sex. Don't know why I thought that, but I did. I was at the time single, didn't have a partner, so I decided I'll give up sex, magic, and masturbation. It was just over 30 odd days when I decided to bring this quote before my instructor to question if I had interpreted it mistakenly. He laughed painfully and said, no, not at all, no. We're Thelemites. It means to dedicate yourself to the work and only to the work. End quote. Further, he referred me to Little Essays Towards Truth and told me to read the chapter on chastity. I did so and laughed hysterically at the unnecessary discomfort I put myself through. So in that chapter of that book, Crowley indeed states that by chastity he means that the magician should be chaste towards their work. Quote, It may assist us to create in our minds a clear concept of this noblest and rarest, yet most necessary of the virtues, if we draw the distinction between it and one of its ingredients of purity, freedom from contamination. Chastity, as the etymology suggests, may be supposed to assert the moral attitude of readiness to resist any assault upon an existing state of purity. A chaste man is thus not merely one who avoids the contagion of impure thoughts and their results, but whose virility is competent to restore perfection to the world about him. Chastity may thus be defined as the strict observance of the magical oath, that is, in the light of the law of Thelema, absolute and perfected devotion to the holy guardian angel, and exclusive pursuit of the way of the true will. Beware of abstinence from action." End quote. A truly chaste Thelemite, then, is ready to make union with their angel, do their will, and cause the will to be done, which is love under will, the union of opposites and destruction of two to make a third thing. Sex then becomes just another tool of the magician to assist them in ascending to the highest, and a wonderful symbol of the great work. Now, back to purification, consecration, and initiation in regards to magical weapons. In making and acquiring them, every possible detail should be thought out, including not only the correspondences of the materials, but the process in which they are made. You are quite literally making the weapons an extension of your being for the sole purpose of magic. Quote, "The attitude of the magician to his weapons should be that of the god to the suppliant who invokes him. It should be the love of the father for his child, the tenderness and care of the bridegroom for his bride, and that particular feeling which the creator of every work of art feels for his masterpiece. The magician will cut the wand from the tree, will strip it of its leaves and twigs, will remove the bark, he will trim the ends nearly, and smooth down the knots. This is the banishing. He will then rub it with consecrated oil until it becomes smooth and glistening and golden. He will then wrap it in silk of the appropriate color. This is the consecration. He will then take it and imagine that it is that hollow tube in which Prometheus brought down fire from heaven, formulating to himself the passing of the holy influence through it. In this and other ways he will perform the initiation, and this being accomplished he will repeat the whole process in an elaborate ceremony. Any person without sufficient ingenuity to devise proper methods of preparation for the other articles required is unlikely to make much of a magician, and we shall only waste space if we deal in detail with the preparation of each instrument. So, this process applied to the weapons should be thought about in regards and applied to ascending the tree of life. Each and every initiation has this threefold process baked into it. There is a cleansing of the slate, a making holy in preparation, and a key sparking the ignition of the vehicle for the god to dwell therein. Love is the law, love under will. I'll catch you all in the next one.